Did you know that one of the most horrifying atrocities in human history is still debated, denied, and forgotten by many? In the shadow of the better-known Holocaust of World War II lies one of humanity's darkest chapters, the Armenian Genocide. Today, we pull back the curtain on this shocking historical episode, examining not just the harrowing events of 1915, but how and why this genocide remains a contentious issue over a century later. Buckle up, because what you're about to hear is a bitter truth that screams relevance even today. In the early 20th century, the world was rapidly reshaping. Nations rose and fell. Empires were holding on to their waning grips of control. Within the Ottoman Empire, tensions were reaching a fever pitch. For centuries, the Armenians thrived as a distinct ethnic and religious group within this empire. They were predominantly Christian in a predominantly Muslim state. Through the cracks of this coexistence, however, tension brewed. Let us rewind to set the stage. By the late 19th century, the Ottoman Empire, which had once sprawled across 3 continents, was in decline. With this crumbling empire came an unease, and scapegoats emerge in such times. For the sultans and many powerful figures of the empire, the Armenians increasingly became an easy target. Political unrest grew. Armenians began advocating for reforms and protections against discriminatory practices. But rather than addressing these demands, the empire grew increasingly wary of what it painted as internal dissent. But why was there such hostility? A growing nationalist movement within Turkey viewed the multi-ethnic makeup of the empire as a threat. The Armenian population, in their minds, stuck out like a sore thumb. Propaganda spewed claims that Armenians were disloyal, conspiring with foreign powers like Russia. This was not a fringe conspiracy. It permeated every level of society. Now enters World War I. It is 1914, and the Ottoman Empire has thrown its weight into the bloodiest conflict the world had yet seen. The war provided cover, a pretext, for the eventual catastrophe. In April 1915, the Ottoman government began its coordinated plan. They arrested hundreds of Armenian intellectuals in Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul. These were educators, writers, and community leaders, the backbone of the Armenian cultural identity. Many were executed or disappeared entirely. And that was just the beginning. Over the course of the next several months and years, the Armenian people were systematically rounded up. The Ottoman forces ordered forced marches into the Syrian desert, a barren, desolate wasteland. Men, women, and children were forced to walk for days without food, water, or shelter under the scorching sun. Those who couldn't keep up were shot or left to die. Villages emptied. Homes were looted by soldiers or locals. Those who survived the march faced starvation and violence in concentration camps set up in the desert. Imagine that. Tens of thousands of innocents crammed into areas without the basic essentials to survive. One harrowing testimony from the period comes from American Ambassador Henry Morgenthau, who documented these atrocities in chilling detail. He called it, and I quote, "an extermination of an entire race." But the killing wasn't done just through deprivation. Mass executions were carried out. Eyewitnesses reported men, women, and children being herded into pits and set upon with bayonets or bullets. Others were burned alive. Think about the horror. Families torn apart, communities erased, and culture violently suppressed. By the end of the carnage, historians estimate that 1.5 million Armenians perished. That's a staggering number, a weight of human loss that would be impossible for most of us to fathom. But it wasn't merely about killing. It was a deliberate attempt to erase Armenian society altogether. Churches were destroyed, historical records burned, and cultural landmarks reduced to rubble. So, why doesn't the Armenian Genocide often feature in the same breath as the Jewish Holocaust? Here lies a deeply political quagmire. For over a century now, Turkey has steadfastly refused to acknowledge the events of 1915 as genocide. Official narratives claim the deaths were unfortunate, but argue that they were a byproduct of war and civil unrest, not systematic extermination. This denial goes hand in hand with Turkey's geopolitical aspirations. Recognizing the genocide could have legal implications, including reparations and territorial disputes, a Pandora's box many nations aren't eager to open. For decades, superpowers like the United States have danced around formally recognizing the Armenian Genocide. Why? Simply put, Turkey's strategic location as a NATO ally has made it an indispensable partner, particularly during the Cold War and in modern conflicts in the Middle East. Should a major nation like the US formally acknowledge the genocide, it risks straining important military and political ties. Shockingly, denial isn't confined just to Turkey. Many everyday people around the globe scarcely know this brutal chapter even exists. Some school curriculums barely mention it, if at all. Media platforms have been criticized for giving little airtime to such an atrocity. Think about that. A crime that wiped out 1.5 million lives has become, for many, a historical footnote. And the relevance to this very day? Let's take a moment to consider the alarming contemporary parallels. Genocides did not stop with Armenia. The Holocaust, Rwanda, Darfur, oftentimes, the world has responded with delayed action or, worse, outright inaction. The echoes of historical denial can be felt in modern-day atrocities. Look at the ongoing struggles of minorities around the world. When governments outright deny their crimes against humanity, or when society allows this history to fade into obscurity, it sets a dangerous precedent. The victims of the Armenian Genocide remind us that human cruelty knows no bounds, but also that forgetting or ignoring it is an offense in itself. And so, as we close this sorrowful chapter, I want to leave you with one final question. How would the world look today if we faced such truths head-on instead of trying to bury them? Consider what this overlooked horror teaches us about power, identity, and the importance of collective memory. This has been an unfiltered exploration of one of history's darkest corners. If you found this story compelling, please like, share, and subscribe to the Chronicles of Human History. And now, I ask you, what lessons from the Armenian Genocide resonate in our world today? Sound off in the comments below.